Hello and welcome to our show, The Asian Rants! Yay! Okay, to get this started, where are my black people at, yo? Because this segment is just for you.
Oh, I don't know. I can't see them yet. It's a bit too dark.
Just turn on the audience lights.
But they're already on.
Anyways, so this is a new segment we like to call Put Down the Chicken and Listen.
Today's topic of discussion, should all lives matter?
I don't know, because I do like me some crackers. Like Ritz crackers, right, yeah. Club crackers.
Welcome back to The Response.
The show where we talk about controversial topics and we try to make sense of them. My name is Mary and I'm here with my co-host Matthew, and let's get started.
Well, that was sufficiently awkward to watch.
Talking about sufficiently awkward, Donald Trump. Oh, we're not allowed to talk about the biggest racist in America when we're talking about racism because it might offend people, just like how racism offends people, but yeah, that totally makes sense.
Okay, so for those of you who are intellectually incapable of understanding what racism is, white people, racism, according to the Oxford Dictionary, is the belief that all members of each race possess characteristics or abilities specific to that race, especially so as to distinguish it as inferior or superior to another race or races. Basically, everything that leaves Donald Trump's mouth. Oh, sorry, we're not allowed to talk about that. It's offensive for sensitive minds.
Your racism is not often openly critically analyzed or talked about, but it should be and it will be. There are a lot of misconceptions when it comes to racism, like what forms it can take. Most people expect it to be very physical or violent, but in reality it can be as simple as a snide comment or a random security check at the airport. There's a lot that isn't said and even less that's seen, and it only helps promote the injustice of the actions directed at innocent victims.
Now, what classifies as racism? Does racism truly even exist? Why are certain people seen as inferior or supreme in the socio-racistic illusionary superiority complex? And how do we as a society promote racism? These are all questions that we will cover over in this segment.
Thank you.
And now on to our interviews.
Alright, welcome back to the Enlightenment Hour. Here we are today with Miss Janice Bellon as our interviewee, and we have a couple questions that we want to ask her. Okay, how does supremism affect racism?
The idea that anyone would be the idea that anyone would have power over another creates a hierarchy, and when hierarchy is established, ultimately power is established. Whenever you have power stacking on top of each other, someone's got to be at the bottom to support that. If the power structure is simply based off of race, what you have is a power structure that is based off of superficiality, and it winds up playing into other things as well, like class, like gender, like sexuality. But what you've done is you've taken one superficial element of a human being and you have said, because they are not what you have established as status quo, that you are better than them. And so supremism of any kind would create all the other isms that exist.
Okay, and how do you believe that racism is sustained?
Racism is sustained by keeping that power structure in place. Anyone who doesn't fight to knock down the perpetuation of that particular stereotype is ultimately not going to support diversity. Okay, and whenever that, getting people exposed to different cultures, getting people exposed to different kinds of other people that are just not identical to yourself. That's how all of those barriers are broken down. But once you have the idea that only that one group that you're familiar with is that supreme group, and whenever you see only figures like that in power, we make associations with that. Okay, so President Obama is our 44th president, right? Let's look at the previous 43 presidents.
All white and all male.
White, male, educated, generally come from a wealthier background, generally. That's not universal. And they're all heterosexual.
Creates a good basis for racism off of that, doesn't it? All right, and our last question is, why does Mark Twain create a satirical novel about racial tensions?
Well, I think that Mark Twain created that novel simply, or wrote the Adventures of Huckleberry Finn and then followed it up with the Adventures of Tom Sawyer, simply because he wanted to highlight the problem. A lot of people automatically throw Huckleberry Finn under the bus because of the apparent racism that even Huck Finn has towards Jim. Whenever Huck Finn is interacting with this black man, it is clear, yes, he might address him with the N-word. At the same time, he's not simply addressing him as the N-word, he's doing so with the connotation of respect and looking at him as a sort of a parental figure. And I think that if you don't catch that whenever you're reading the book, it is so easy to write it off as just simply racist. But I think that there's so much underlying that the book itself that we see the parody of that race because Mark Twain wants to highlight the problem in America. He doesn't want to exacerbate it. And I think that's important whenever you read any book with a particular race characteristic of any kind. You could look at Joy Luck Club and in some ways call it racist. Okay? But Joy Luck Club isn't racist. It's highlighting the problem of how do you integrate yourself into Western culture whenever you're a first generation American. And he's dealing with people who are trying to integrate themselves into normal society, especially post Civil War, and they haven't quite gotten there yet. And
We're still getting there now.
Exactly, we're still getting there now, and I think the failure of recognizing that is why racism is still perpetuated even in the 21st century today.
Yeah. All right,
Thank you.
thank you for your time. This is fun.
Welcome back to the Enlightened Hour. We're here with Monique as a guest. What is racism?
Well, my definition of racism, and I won't say that this is what the dictionary says, but I really believe that racism is ignorance about something or someone that you don't know anything about. And so if you don't have the knowledge or the respect to engage time to have some knowledge about something that you perceive to have a problem with, then it can be considered racism.
So that's basically ignorance.
Pretty much.
Why does racism exist?
Well, I think it goes back to the very same thing. And at this point in this country, I think that even beyond ignorance, it's now become laziness because knowledge is available. Communication at one time in the U.S. was very primitive. I mean, dating back to slavery, whatever was in your community or whatever was around you, that's the only way you really understood. That's the only way you gathered knowledge about what was around you. Receiving mail it took a lot of time, and so advancements in understanding or broadening anyone's horizons about society and the way that people live and understanding more about people, a lot of that knowledge perhaps was not available, but that's not an excuse anymore. In addition to technology, opening up opportunity for engagement, people live closer, people have bigger communities, people have more ways to travel and to interact and engage with each other. And so it broadens the opportunity for people to desire to know more. It would behoove me to sit next to you and consider you, or me to consider to be a racist toward you just because you don't look like me, your hair is not like mine, or you don't sound like somebody that I've been around. Even as a child being raised myself in rural Mississippi where I saw crosses burned all the time. As a little child, I didn't understand that they were burning those crosses because they were different and didn't want to accept my difference. So there were occasions when I walked up to people with hoods on their heads and I didn't know that wasn't something that I wasn't supposed to do. So I didn't know, because when those people took those hoods off, they did respect us, but when they put them on, they didn't. And so that always kind of prompted me to want to understand more about why people hide behind things and not really express the genuineness of what's in their heart. I'd rather know who you are without the mask than to perceive you as something that will hurt me with a mask on. So I think that, it's time for the whole country, not just for this country, for people all over the world to take the mask off. Just let me see who you are, and if there's something that you don't know about me, ask me. You'd be surprised at what the answer might be.
Why do stereotypes play into racism?
Again, I think it's because of people's just willingness to stick to what they've always known and no willingness to change. We have to be open. We have to, just like, as cars have changed over years, and gas and fuel has changed over years. When we first started flying, we had twin-engine planes. Now we have super jets and super jetliners and all of these kinds of things. And people have advanced in those areas. I mean, even the way that we buy. I mean, we have always been able to walk into a building and buy groceries or buy clothing or buy things. But now, with the advancements in technology, we're able to buy online. But you have to want to learn how or agree to some form of discovery to know that these opportunities are available for you. And so we have to do the same thing with human beings. We have to just be open and try to understand their position so that we can end the stereotypes of racism.
Thank you.
Weird. Welcome back to The Response. My name is Miriam, and I'm here with my host Matthew and our two guest hosts, Syed and Emily Joy. Previously on the show, we interviewed a series of people to gain their views on racism in this society. Today, in this segment, we will be casting a new light on the topic.
Taken from Nelson Mandela, a famous civil rights activist in South Africa, to deny any person their human rights is to challenge their very humanity. To impose on them a wretched life of hunger and deprivation is to dehumanize them. Mandela talked about this vision for South Africa and how, with this U.S.'s aid, South Africa would be able to gain true democracy by eradicating the apartheid laws in place, similar to the Jim Crow laws that limited the African American community during
The apparent favoritism shown by the NBA in selecting black athletes over other races seems to solidify black supremacy in the sport. This draws into question whether or not blacks are really discriminated against.
In a satirical article by The Onion, it states, "Look at the facts. We live in a country where systemic discrimination exists just under the surface everywhere you look, even in government policies." In the book Huckleberry Finn, Huck and Jim hide in the Mississippi River because at the time, when you saw a slave, you had to return it due to the fugitive slave law in place. However, social dynamics have changed over time to the point where people who are of different than whites were considered as property, but now in current day society, people who are different are considered equal by law.
Sadly, being considered equal by the law does not deem you as equal by those enforcing the laws. Even though the laws have changed, people's mentality has not. In a recent incident in Ferguson, Missouri, a black teenager was shot and killed by a local white officer. During the court ruling, it was deemed that the officer was in his right to shoot. It was the depressingly familiar case of injustice and police harassment gone unchecked. Similarly so, in the book Huckleberry Finn, black Americans were constantly harassed by their white counterparts without any justice or fair treatment. The author of the book, Mark Twain, was a witness to several such crimes in his livelihood, and making me believe that witnessing such events compelled Twain to write the satirical novel.
In a response to the court ruling, Obama states, and then finally I think it's going to be important for all of us to convene a conversation on race. In this quote, Obama tries to emphasize how society should become open-minded to the plight of other people around him. In the traditional society that Huck lived in, Huck had to decide if he would turn Jim in or help Jim, which at the time was so radical. Common to the traditional society during this time, policies like the fugitive slave law promoted racism, thereby making people more close-minded. So Huck, a man who was raised in a society where whites were superior to the blacks and had to have a man versus self conflict, and if he had taken into consideration Obama's point of view, then maybe interracial interactions could be possible.
Thank you for watching our show tonight, where we discuss the controversies surrounding racism and racial interactions and shed new light to the topic. We hope we opened your minds with new ways to understand this topic. Goodbye!
Hi, Matthew. Okay, go.
And now on to our interviews.
No, that was at the same time.
It's all your fault.
Okay. Go.
Poor Mariam. Mariam can't speak right now. She's sort of different. But okay, I'll just take over her part. So to deny any person, so basically what Nelson Mandela said is to deny any
Mariam's
person
getting bored.
their human rights is a challenge.
bored,
their
Matthew.
humanity.
Right.
Recording? Yeah. Okay. Who's doing the Obama one? Oh, okay.
Obama.
Are you finished?
Yay! Go.
It's this TV show.
Thank you for watching our show today over the controversial topic about racism. We hope we shed a couple new lights on this and opened your mind.
Like you burned! That was actually good! That was actually good! Yes, you burned!
Sorry.
Dang it.
I forgot what I said. Sorry.
That was actually awesome.
Thank you for watching our show today. Okay. Thank you for watching our show today.
Want me to pause?
Yes.
How do you pause?
Just push the red button for you.